Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. For nearly 2 decades now, there has been a clamor from foreign countries for India to allow their legal practitioners to practice here. However, stiff resistance put up by the Indian lawyer community, by and large, has put a brakes on it. Attempts to bring about amendments to the Advocates Act in 2000 and even later have been stymied. Meanwhile, a Madras High Court ruling in 2012 allowing foreign lawyers to come to India to advise their clients on deals is pending appeal in the Supreme Court right now. The NDA government, which got elected last year, has been showing keen interest to make foreign legal firms operating in India possible. A committee of secretaries of the Government of India is working on it and is expected to come out with a plan shortly. Meanwhile, lawyers and their various organizations are a divided lot on this issue. Today, we will look at all the pros and cons of the issue and what are the hurdles in making it possible and whether the proposal is desirable at all. To discuss this, I have an eminent panel of guests. I have Soli Sorabjee, former Attorney General of India, K.N.Bhat, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, and also Chairman-elect of Bar Association of India, Ajay Shankar, former Secretary DIPP, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Government of India, Prof. C.Raj, Vice Chancellor, OB Jindal Global University, and Jayanth Krishnan, Professor of Law and Charles L. Whistler Faculty Fellow and Director, Center on Global Legal Profession, Indiana University, USA. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Sorabjee, you think this idea of allowing foreign firms to operate in India is an idea whose time has come now?
Actually, I don't see why we can't allow foreign lawyers to appear and argue here and then give legal assistance, provided they are subject to the same rules and regulations as the Indian advocates are under the Bar Council rules or under the relevant provisions of the Advocates Act. We should not fear competition. Competition enhances efficiency, and I don't see any reason if they are subject to the same conditions as Indian lawyers are. I don't think there is any great danger to the Indian profession. We are strong enough, the Indian bar is strong enough to withstand competition, be it from English lawyers or French or German or whatever.
But Mr. Sorabjee,
so I'm not in favor of this banning entry of foreign lawyers, absolutely.
But Mr. Sorabjee, the argument against it has been that, all along has been that, the Indian lawyers don't have a level playing field when they have to compete with foreign law firms.
What do you mean by level playing fields? They are not as efficient? They are not as capable? What kind of level playing fields? Do we require special concessions? I don't think so. I think Indian lawyers can withstand any competition. They're as good, if not better, than foreign lawyers. But to deny entry of foreign lawyers and foreign firms in absolute terms, I think is not a good move. I repeat, they should be subject to the same rules and regulations as the Indian advocates are, Indian lawyers are. And if that is done, I think that there is no danger to the Indian legal profession.
Okay. Dr. Rajkumar, would you agree with that? And when he says that same rules and have to apply for them as it is applied for the...
Well, I actually absolutely agree with Mr. Sorabjee about it. But the more important point, which is what the foreign law firms are really seeking, is not so much about practicing in Indian courts. The main sort of demand of the international law firms in particular is to be able to practice foreign and international law in India. In some ways, they are actually not interested to practice Indian law, as in giving legal advice on Indian law matters, or for that matter, appearing before Indian courts. The subject matter for discussion, or rather the bone of contention, is whether we should allow the international law firms to function in India so that they can actually work on international issues, international law, foreign law, including international commercial arbitration. Right. And this has happened because globalization has provided an opportunity for multinational corporations as well as Indian corporations working in different parts of the world. That is why it is important for us to move towards opening up of legal services so that foreign law firms can work it. And of course, they should be regulated by all the rules and regulations which are available under the Bar Council of India, because Bar Council of India happens to be the sole regulator for both legal education and legal profession in India.
Okay, Mr. Bhat. Mr. Bhat, how do you look at this? You know, as
Yes.
Dr. Rajkumar says, if you have heard what Mr. Sorabjee said, Mr. Sorabjee says there should not be any ban, they should be allowed here. Rajkumar says that, you know, essentially what the foreign law firms are looking for is to come here and you know, not really practice in courts on Indian law, but of their own country's law, essentially.
You see, the internationally litigation is a small part of the legal practice.
Right.
Internationally, really, that is, arguing in the court of law is not the real issue.
Right.
Real issue is dealing with business matters, advising their clients, and drafting, transfer, etc., etc. So many things are there involved that in principle there should be no objection at all. Because if a foreign investor in India, if he wants to have his own lawyer by his side, he is welcome to have it. Because, you know, there are two types of foreign lawyers. One is fly in and fly out, FIFO lawyers.
Yes.
Another is people who come and set up their offices here.
Right.
In either case, in all over the world, what they have done is separate regulations for them. For example, if a foreign lawyer comes and practices here and for some reason is made liable legally for payment of some damages or something, you can't trace him by chasing. So he must be compelled to have a compulsory insurance. I'm just giving one example. There are a number of regulations world over applicable especially to foreign lawyers. And subject to that one, I see no reason. And in any case, I can tell you one thing, having done some work abroad also, that unless you have a local help, either in the matter of advising or in the matter of litigation or arbitration, it is very difficult to proceed with. Legal practice has got some local flavor always.
Right.
So okay. I don't see any reason at all why we should fear.
Bhat,
it should be, if you are welcoming foreign investment.
But Mr. Bhat,
yes.
But Mr. Bhat, one of the arguments of people who have been resisting this for quite some time, your own fraternity, they say that, you know, it has to be done on reciprocal basis, and Indian lawyers should be allowed to the same kind of you know, facilities which a foreign lawyer from a particular country is allowed. How do you look at that?
Girish, I understand your question. Reciprocal means today, even if I am permitted to go and practice in England, who is going to engage me? It is unless it is an Indian client who has got business in England, then I may be taken there. And we have been subject to academic and other qualifications. There is no problem in most of the countries. But, you know, as I told you, the litigation actually arguing in a court of law is a small part of a lawyer's business.
Right.
The lawyer's business is basically advising, interacting with the lawyers who are actually handling the cases and the things like that. So therefore, reciprocity is already existing in a large measure.
Okay.
If Indian businessmen go and establish many businesses abroad, then Indian lawyers will be needed. And already Indian lawyers are being taken to arbitration and other matters in foreign countries where Indians are involved.
Okay.
Because you can't compel the foreigners to engage you.
Okay, Mr. Ajay Shankar, this is something which has engaged the government of India for quite some time. All these years, what has been the hurdles which the government has faced? Or do you think that there has not been political will on part of the government to go ahead with this?
I personally am very glad to hear a certain measure of consensus that the Indian legal fraternity should have no apprehensions. Because what has delayed progress has been the resistance from the legal community. And the legal community in India is one of a powerful constituency in terms of our politics, in terms of our society. So no government felt that it could move forward without a degree of consensus. The fact of the matter is that India has comparative advantage in the services sector and has demonstrated that in segment after segment of services. And Indians have benefited globally. Indian firms have benefited globally. Indian firms have become global firms. And Indians have got jobs not only in India but overseas. So whichever services segment has been opened up, it began with, say, software, BPO, world of finance, the world of education, which is not yet fully open, but he's a good example of what can happen if you open up education. If you look at consultancy, I mean, all the big names in consultancy, of the big names of the firms are actually Indians who had their practice in India and for Asia. So in law, I think the same thing will happen. You will see Indians work very well and succeed and occupy top positions in global firms who open offices in India and serve Asia. And you'll see Indian firms emerging and giving good competition to global firms. So I agree with you. The time has come for...
The time has come for it.
For Indian professionals in the world of law to make their presence felt on the global stage.
Jayanth, Krishnan, how, I mean, you sitting as an Indian sitting, you know, in US, how important is this for foreign legal firms for India to open up?
Well, yeah, first let me just say thank you for having me here today. And I think this is a very important topic. The center that I run at Indiana University has actually been looking at this issue for some time. I am in full agreement with all of my colleagues on the panel here. And the reason I am is because of one other aspect that hasn't been mentioned, and that is in the work, in the research that we've been doing, especially looking at the next generation of lawyers in this country, the law students. They are very, very excited about this opportunity to have foreign law firms come in, because I think, as our colleague has said, when the foreign law firms come in, it's not as though the foreigners themselves are going to be staffing these offices. They're going to be hiring, and they're going to be hiring local talent. And for all of the reasons that our colleagues have said, and in our work, we know that Indian lawyers can compete at the very highest level. And so I think having a competitive playing field is...
But my question is this. Yeah. Why are the foreign legal firms so keen to enter into Indian market?
I think the fact of the matter is that they realize this is an incredible opportunity for them. I mean, let's not try to, make any excuses. This is a great market with great business potential, and I think that they see this as a terrific economic opportunity. They have clients who are interested in investing in India, and those clients want to have their lawyers who they're comfortable with representing them. But as I also said earlier, I think it's important to realize that it would not be unusual to have foreign lawyers partnering or working with local lawyers and local law firms. And I can see that emerging as well. We've seen that in other contexts. We've seen that in China. We've seen that in Singapore, in Brazil. And so these types of joint ventures, it seems to me, are what's going to likely emerge. And I'm very excited about these possibilities.
Okay. Mr. Sorabjee. So, Sorabjee, another issue which is raised by people who have been resisting this change is that they are pointing to the accountancy, the chartered accountants, the accountancy firms which have opened up in India in the last 10 years. They are saying that the local accountancy firms have suffered a lot, except the big ones. The multinational accountancy firms have taken over. And that is one of the scenarios which they envisage will happen in the legal field also, which will be affecting the local legal firms. How will you look at it?
No, Giri, I don't share those apprehensions. After all, competition will definitely result in elimination of inefficient, ineffective firms or organizations. Main thing in principle, why do you object? Impose conditions, make them subject to rules and regulations, strict rules and regulations. But then why do you deprive anyone who wants the services of a foreign firm? It's very important. If he's invested so much, I don't understand. I think really at the bottom of it is fear of competition, and I think that is something I cannot appreciate, because I think that really indicates apprehension that we are not good enough to stand competition, which I don't accept. Our top firms and our top lawyers can compete and compete successfully with top English laws and top English and foreign firms. That's my belief.
Okay, but Mr. Sorabjee, it is said that even if this whole change take place, it has to be done in an incremental manner. It cannot be done in a overnight. One of the things which the Indian lawyers are talking about, some of the law firms are talking about, is that they should be allowed to advertise, because they need to have their businesses, being more visible outside India also, so that they'll be able to create some kind of a level playing field before the foreign firms enter. Do you accept? Do you think that Indian law firms should be allowed to advertise?
I don't see any objection really in advertising. After all, now the present, if you look at the scene abroad and everywhere, advertisement is okay for Indian legal firms. Counsel may not be appropriate for him to advertise himself, that I am the leading counsel in criminal law, constitutional law. But legal firms, Indian legal firms, they are allowed to advertise. I see no objection in principle.
You have no objection to it in principle. Mr. Bhat, do you have any objection to that? And also this whole,
Yes.
idea of incrementally allowing these kind of things, first ensuring that the Indian firms are on firm footing and, and are in a position to take on the competition before the actual competition allowed inside.
Girish, for once you just remember that an American lawyer is not coming and fighting a Delhi rent control case. He is not going to compete. He is going to compete only with the large acquisitions, mergers, and things like that. A legal practice, what we see in terms here as a local lawyer arguing some cases, that is not the international legal practice. So the area of their competition is at a very high level. And that one can be, as Mr. Sorabjee has rightly pointed out, you can regulate their one by one wherever it is required, and the advertisement, permit your law firms to go and advertise if they want to. But advertisement also has got certain ethics. You just can't go and advertise it like some soap or shampoo or something like that. You have to be a little more standard. And even otherwise, I can tell you, Girish, in a subtle manner, advertisement goes on internationally through cocktail parties or through so many. I mean, these are all matters which are well known. I don't have to explain it. If you attend an international law conference, you know the subtle ways in which people come and advertise themselves as they are available for so and so services.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't see any objection. And, in any case, they don't have to advertise in India.
So, yeah. That's true. But both of you, both you and Mr. Sorabjee believe that the domestic firms don't need any kind of protection at this point of time before allowing them.
Absolutely, no protection at all is needed. And unlike the chartered accountants or even a physician, because the world over that is a similar. But law is something different. It has got a local flavor always. It is not something which you can cook through computer programming. Because, that's a reason why we are not afraid at all. Because let them come any number and it's the local legal practice is very safe, and people who are saying that like East India Company, they will come. Those are different days and today is a different time.
Okay.
We know how to safeguard ourselves.
So Mr. Sorabjee, no protectionism required for the domestic firms.
What protection? I don't understand this protection against by banning entry of foreign firms. I don't think. In fact, it really indicates a lack of confidence. I think it's an insult to our firm, Indian firms and Indian laws, that they require protection. Okay. We don't require any protection. We can withstand any competition, and we can be the better for it.
Even if they are practicing, even if they are practicing Indian law, you don't have a problem.
Well, Indian law is not properly pointed out. They are not going to give advice on the Delhi Rent Act or the Bombay Tenancy Act.
Okay.
It will be for big things, acquisitions, mergers of companies, various other things, competition law. So I don't think, and besides, I really feel that the very movement, I must say, the intensity of opposition to the entry of foreign firms and foreign lawyers bespeaks a lack of confidence in our own fraternity, which I thoroughly disapprove of.
Okay. You know, coming from a man like you, I hope that your fraternity will take it seriously, Dr. Rajkumar. So what do you think the government should do? Can they just go ahead now and open it up, or you think that there is need for a certain amount of,
yeah, but the legal framework is
putting
such
the kind of framework.
So there is obviously the Advocates Act, it's a parliament enacted statute, a very old legislation, is the sole regulatory body that regulates both legal education and legal profession in the country. So in fact, one of the big challenges of opening up of the law firms is the fact that the government just cannot do it as an executive decision. It has to go through a process.
Through a parliamentary process, a legislative process.
Or get the Bar Council of India to have a framework which will allow that they will regulate the entry of, because you don't need to actually have an amendment to the legislation at all. The legislation has sufficient provisions which will allow the Bar Council of India to regulate the entry of foreign law firms into India. Now, historically, as you rightly said, in fact, the largest resistance did not actually come from the large lawyers who are spread across. In fact, it's one of the not so well kept secrets. The opposition to the entry of foreign law firms is not the litigators. It is the Indian law firms who I strongly believe have strong vested interest in ensuring that international law firms don't come into India, because the first thing that will happen is they need to democratize their functioning itself. They need to significantly enhance their compensation framework. They need to redefine their partnership framework, which will allow people beyond the family to be part of the partnership framework. All these things will dramatically change the contours of legal firm practice in India. So the first step,
better. You will think it's for the better.
Absolutely. And I think, as Jay mentioned, one of the things which we need to understand is, at the end of the day, we have 1,240 law schools in India. Every year, we are graduating 50 to 60,000 law students. Now, if we are to talk about the future of the legal profession in the country, we need to have a diversified set of career opportunities, which will include legal practice in courts, but also have a framework of allowing commercial law firms, Indian as well as international, available for them. And the biggest challenge in relation to reciprocity is not so much whether Indian law firms should be allowed to practice overseas and Indian lawyers, which already, by the way, exists. In fact, I am admitted to the New York bar. I am an Indian national and I was practicing in New York. In fact, a foreigner, even if studied in Indian law school, is actually prohibited to practice in India under the Advocates Act. But New York or US does not have nationality-based restriction to practice. That part of it is not the problem. The point about the level playing field is an important point which we cannot entirely dismiss. The point is not about the practice itself. It's about the ability of Indian lawyers and the type and the quality of legal education that we are giving to our students, which will enable them. The fact of the matter is, most of our law schools suffer from mediocrity. So if we have...
So that also will rise.
Exactly. So competition, as Mr. Sorabjee quite rightly mentioned, will enable the legal profession and the quality of legal services to improve. It will challenge the law schools in India to be able to churn out better lawyers who can in turn contribute to the legal profession.
Jan, do you agree with that?
I do. I would just say one sort of corollary to that, which is it's true that historically the law firms in this country have not been as democracy-based as we might like. But there is a new trend that has been emerging, something that we might refer to as peel-off law firms. You have lawyers who are peeling off of the traditional law firms, forming their own law firms, trying to use a system of meritocracy. My sense is that will only be enhanced with more competition in the marketplace.
Okay, Mr. Ajay Shankar, you think that to bring about these changes, these are being called major legal reforms actually, you don't need a legislative measures?
I think government will need to and will probably steer it skillfully in a way that they get the outcome they need, and they'll have to take the legal profession along. But I would like to build on what he said, is that I see a great potential of new law firms emerging in India, which can give the global firms who enter India a run for their money. And The fact of the matter is that in the globalized economy, law firms grow as the economy grows, and the commercial practice grows as the economy grows. And as India moves on to an 8-10% growth trajectory, as Indian firms become MNCs, as foreign firms operate in India, I see Indian law firms emerging with a degree of confidence and ambition.
But you don't see the same kind of problem which the accountants that are facing.
No, I was going to come to that. That somewhere in the policy space and the actual practice, I think as a country we should want to back our national firms. Within the level playing field which globalization provides, a country needs to back its national firms. Now that attitude is a bit weak in India today.
Right.
So if we have that combined with the competition and the opening up, I think we'll get the best out.
So you say that certain amount of regulation is necessary where the domestic firms have a little advantage. Is that what you're saying?
No, partly you don't discriminate against startups. I mean, to give you a very simple example, in government procurement in India, you cannot buy a product which has not been used and proven for 2 years. So India can buy a Dreamliner, but Indian public procurement will not allow the purchase of an Indian product developed by an Indian firm because it has not been proven for 2 years. So I think in the way public firms, PSUs operate, government operates, a little, or what I'd say, a level playing field for Indian firms should exist.
Okay. Both Mr. Sorabjee and Mr. Bhat, would you agree with Mr. Ajay Shankar that certain amount of regulation is necessary where certain amount of advantage is given to the domestic firms so that they don't go out of the market?
No, it is not basically to regulate, encourage the local firms. It is to see that the foreign firms behave. The regulation is required for that purpose. That is how regulations are framed all over the world to permit foreign lawyers to practice there. There are special regulations made looking into the conditions. And you don't require any protection to the Indian lawyers at all. And for that matter, no lawyer in the world will require protection from foreign invasion. Okay?
Okay. Mr. Sorabjee? Last word, sir?
Yes, I agree. I agree. We shouldn't be, say, alarmists. We can take on foreign firms and foreign lawyers who have sufficient confidence in our ability to do so.
Okay. Okay, sir. On that note, we need to end. It's on a positive note. Everybody seems to agree that, it has to come. But I'm sure there's still certain quarters in this country among the lawyer profession who are still resisting to it. We will wait and watch how the government will be able to deal with that resistance and how quickly it will be able to come out with this
vested interest
with this legal reform. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another edition of The Big Picture same time tomorrow.